All right. Good morning, Doug. As we expected, there are plenty of news events to give us plenty to talk about today. I'd like to get your take on them, and I think we should start with SBF's arrest.
Actually, let me start with my cup of coffee. The reason I mention this is it's still fresh on my mind. This morning I decided to have one of these canned coffees that are pre-mixed for you. And so I was looking at the label to see exactly what kind of taste delight they had in store for me. And I read real ingredients. That was one of the selling points.
Okay.
So, and of course, this is shocking. I mean, how stupid do they think the average American is? Does he think that they're going to have spiritual ingredients or artificial ingredients? But real ingredients shouldn't be like a selling point for a coffee. Phony ingredients as opposed to.
Yeah, I think it would be fake.
Anyway.
I think it'd be fake ingredients.
Fake ingredients, yeah.
But
anyway,
yeah.
This is like the kind of world that we live in. It seems to me.
Well, the marketers are always looking for something to put on the label, some bullet points that can draw your attention to it. So real ingredients as opposed to whatever your imagination might wonder. You'd be like, well, I mean, it does sound better than what you imagine the opposite is.
Well, the fact that they put real ingredients there didn't discourage me from buying the coffee, and it might have encouraged some other people to buy it. So
I bet it would have.
Further proof, as far as I'm concerned, that solipsism is the most correct philosophical theory. I don't know how else to explain all this stupidity.
But then that means that labels like that are a product of your consciousness. So, Doug, I think we know who to point the finger at from now on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think perhaps I've become just entirely too cynical. But then again, I'm not cynical enough.
You're not. But we did talk a couple weeks ago about this SBF guy and thinking that he was just going to get away with it. So that was us being our cynical selves, and he's arrested now. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, okay, that's good. He's arrested. It seems like the wheels of justice are grinding along, but things I don't understand. Well, this has to do with the extradition treaty, I'm sure, between, not that they need one. I mean, if the US wants somebody lifted from the Bahamas, they just do it. So these formalities of an extradition treaty and all that, they're just.
Yeah. It's a choice. They're doing it this way. They don't have to.
Yeah, but I'm asking myself, so I don't know what the legalisms behind this are, but maybe I'm thinking, look, he's got to be a dead man walking. That's my guess. Because with all the money that was laundered through his companies, and a lot of it apparently went off to the Ukraine, and God knows where else, you can't have him singing like a canary in a trial. I mean,
right.
He's probably not as bad as Jeffrey Epstein for their purposes, but he's got to do a lot of damage. So I think it would be easier to knock somebody off in a Bahamian jail than a US jail.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's also got, the timing is interesting. For some context, people might not know that, Gary Gensler, who would be the regulator who was responsible for what FTX was doing, that he was the CFO of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, and he has connections. They have multiple connections, but so he's connected to the Clintons, which should make you very afraid, I think, anyway, if you cross them, right? Because we know about the list of questionable deaths around the Clintons. So there's that. But then also the timing is interesting because the day before he was arrested, there was a FOIA request forced the revealing of Gary Gensler's calendar, and he had removed items from his public calendar, including meetings with the Clintons and meeting with George Soros. So like he hid those for some reason from the public. I don't know if that means anything, but it's interesting. Why would you hide it? then also this kid, not a kid, Sam was supposed to testify in front of Congress under oath the following day, the day after he was arrested. So I don't know, maybe it's the timing made it so that he didn't have to do the under oath part. So, and it certainly does shut him up for the time being.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this shows the high degree of intelligence and ability to correctly analyze cost-benefit ratios of George Soros, for instance, because apparently, he concentrated getting attorney general, prosecutors, people like that elected. It's a lot easier to get them elected than it is higher offices, but they're extremely powerful as to who gets hurt or who gets to skate when there's a scandal of some type. And all the people that, it seems like all the prosecuting attorneys in major cities in the US are basically wokesters at this point.
Does seem that way.
So,
Does seem that way. You're right. He's a good investor. I mean, he gets an ROI, that's for sure.
yeah. Well, more cause for pessimism, I suppose.
So what do you think is going to happen though? I mean, you said it might be easier to, to make sure this guy, Sam, never talks ever if he's in a Panamanian prison versus post extradition to the US. I mean,
Bahamian.
Yeah, Bahamian, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So are you concerned about his safety in this prison?
Well, I'm not concerned about his safety, quite frankly. I mean, he's the kind of person that if there was any justice in the world, somebody would have knocked him off a long time ago. What amazes me is here you have a person. Is he smart or not? Does he know much about computers?
I think he is intelligent. Yes. And I think he does have some programming experience. Yeah.
Okay. But it's not like he's a world-class genius in any way.
Doesn't come off that way.
So here we have a person that if you met him on a street corner, you'd disregard him. He's fat. It looks like he needs to visit plastic surgery for breast reduction. He's slovenly. He needs a haircut. He wears clothes from Walmart. That's okay. Except you shouldn't be meeting important people wearing basketball
shorts. Yep.
Yeah, he should have pushed it a little bit further. Instead of a T-shirt, he should have been wearing a wife beater T-shirt.
Exactly.
That would have been a final touch of disrespect for everybody. And the amazing thing is, these people, like Bill Clinton and I don't know who else he's met with, dressed in his signature attire, they're sitting there and taking him seriously. And instead of saying, look, this is just a bridge too far, even for me. I can imagine Clinton saying, get the fuck out of here.
Exactly. It's degrading for him. He's he is intelligent. He hangs out with lots of really intelligent, impressive people, good or bad. He does have that circle. So it is degrading for him to have to sit there on stage with this kid. It really is.
It's all just like kabuki theater that we're watching. And how did this kid get control of tens of billions of dollars? I'm sure somebody's going to write a book about it. I hope it's an honest book. I'm sure there'll be lots of books, but I hope there's an honest book that's written explaining exactly how he rose and people gave him all that money.
Yes, without even really checking into him. It seems like no one did any reasonable due diligence at all, which is just shocking. It's just really shocking. And I think that Michael Lewis, the guy who wrote Moneyball, I believe he was working on a book when this all went down. He was actually working on a book about FTX and crypto when this all went down. So a really good writer is already on the case, it sounds like.
Well, I hope that he's not corrupted somehow, Michael Lewis. But how did he get this money? I mean, the problem, you know, all of this stems, of course, from the fact that central banks, since they went on this wild Mr. Toad's ride, where anything is possible, and you can print billions and trillions of dollars, and it's just completely out of control. They can't keep track of all the money that they printed. They've printed trillions of dollars. Where did it all go? Or more importantly, to whom did it all go? You know, it's so as big as $37 billion sounds, it's barely a rounding error combined with all the, because a trillion is 1,000 billions. So $37 billion, which has disappeared, is only 1/3 of 1% of a trillion, but they printed up multiple trillions. And that's what happens, is that it's so much money that you don't even bother accounting for things. You don't look at the right side of the menu. It doesn't matter if it's $1,000 bottle of champagne. It doesn't matter if it's a 10,000 bottle of champagne. But that's what's going on in the whole world today.
Yeah. 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 And that's all because basically money is fake. Unlike the real ingredients in your coffee, our money is not real. Our money is fake.
Exactly. That's an excellent point. If there was, if people, as they used to do before the 1930s, used gold as money, and it was real gold, limited in amount, represented with little pieces of metal, they wouldn't be throwing it around like this.
Nope. There's no chance. There's no chance. So what do you think about, can you imagine in one of your books, it opens, one of the Higher Ground books, it opens with the main character in prison and how difficult that process was for him. This was a guy who, in your character, who had a lot of worldly experience, who had experienced difficulty and challenges. How must you imagine it being for this kid who lived in a $40 million penthouse and had his very specific diet and his very specific drug cocktail that he would use to keep him functioning at his best, he thought. It would always air conditioning even, which is not available in the prison he's in right now. I just wonder the shock he must be going through right now.
Yeah, and assuming he's not offed in the next little while before he can deliver testimony, I think that, in fact, I think I read that Las Vegas, there's a bookmaker there that's offering odds, or it's possible to place a bet that he's going to be offed.
Yeah, I think odds they're reasonable.
Yeah, but no, I think I'd take that bet. But where will they put him, and what will he do, and how will the other prisoners treat him? Will he become somebody's butter boy? Probably, but it depends on what kind of a federal pen they put him in.
They only have one there. I was looking yesterday trying to find some pictures of it and read about it. And they do have a maximum security, and then they have everyone else. The maximum security is you're much more controlled, your interaction with the rest of the population, and you'd only get about 30 minutes a day outside of your cell. Or actually they were saying you're supposed to get an hour a day, but some people, they say, we're getting as little as 30 minutes a week outside of the cell. But that's safer for him than where he is, which is in the normal one, which your typical cell has 6 people in it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. It's going to be a culture shock for him.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see what the next fraud that, I think it shows that the bear market in cryptos is not over, because some of these things are related to each other.
Yes.
X is supporting Y, and Y is supporting Z, and the Z goes back to supporting A, and we could see some serious damage to
Yep, I think
Bitcoin
so.
prices.
I still think Bitcoin's going to go down further. It's my guess. I think the other ones are very, very risky to have at this point. But I think the Binance, which is the biggest exchange, there's rumors about its stability, have been for a while, but billions of dollars of cryptocurrency has been pulled off the exchange in the last couple of days. So,
But my question is that why doesn't everybody pull all of their money off the exchange?
exactly.
I leave it at risk. Why would people do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Unless you're actively trading, there's no reason for that. And I think that, I think that's what everyone's waking up to, this fact all of a sudden. And so, the outflows are massive at this point. So ultimately, I think it's positive in that for Bitcoin holders, it gets people to hold their, to hold their keys, to actually keep it on a hardware wallet or something versus keeping it in an exchange, which is what they should always have done. So I think this is good and healthy for that for the long term, but short term, you could just imagine if there's any leverage anywhere and you're pulling money out of the system, then this contagion can spread still.
Well, one thing that's for sure is that there will be laws enacted, I think, and regulation, a new agency set up or a division of the SEC or whoever it is that does this. And then you can forget about, yeah, it's all going to change. It was a nice bubble while it lasted, the 20,000, coins floating out there, but
it's gone. I think it's gone. At least I think it's gone. I think these the shit coins, as they're called, I think it's gonna be tough for them.
Yeah, okay. So it's on to the next thing at this point.
I think so. It'd be hard to top the crypto bubble though, in terms of just money going in, chasing after financial gain like that. That's
I feel bad about the crypto bubble. And the reason I feel bad about it is that there was a heavy component of libertarians that got involved in crypto and made a lot of money. And I fear that they'll all have lost it. And all those rich libertarians are going to have to go back to living in their mother's basements.
I think most of them were Bitcoin people though, because I think they were mostly Bitcoin, and then they used some of their Bitcoin proceeds to put into these other projects, but I think they're probably okay. A lot of them probably bought Bitcoin at $300.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
But there will be new people there will be a return to mother's basement for some. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to talk about is that we got news this week that the inflation rate had gone down. So that's supposedly good news, I guess. That, I mean, it's definitely good news, inflation rate going down if it's real. But then I noticed one specific item that stood out, and you're looking at the details of the inflation report, that jumped out to me was eggs. And the price of eggs are actually up 25% month over month and almost 300% year over year. So it just makes you wonder, I guess, back to your real or fake ingredient, where we started, how real or fake are these inflation numbers? Because if something like that, which is a grocery staple, most Americans probably buy a dozen every week. If they're experiencing these huge price hikes, on items like this, how can inflation be as low as 7%?
Well, it doesn't make any sense to me, but on the other hand, if you go out to buy gas in at least this part of the US where I am right now, I can get regular for under $3 a gallon. Mm-hmm. So it's really fallen tremendously, as has gasoline on the futures exchange. A lot of things have come down. I guess what's going on is that even though they've created trillions and trillions of dollars in the last few years, and they're all still out there, a great part of the inflationary bubble comes from what the banking system does after the Fed creates the super money. And the point of raising interest rates is to encourage people to pay off their debt, which retires those dollars, in effect, takes those chips back off the table and not borrow more. So I guess the regime of raising interest rates, which flirts with a catastrophic deflation, of course, where if enough people can't pay the debt and the daisy chain. So It looks like it's working so far.
Are you predicting a soft landing, Doug?
No, it looks like it's working so far,
Yeah.
but so far could end at any time. So no, I'm predicting more fervently than ever a hard landing. And they're going to try to mitigate the hard landing. It's, in fact, it's not just going to be a hard landing. It's going to be a crash landing.
Yes.
In fact, it's not just going to be a crash landing. It's going to be like somebody puts a 747 into a power dive, nose down, and steps on the throttle. That's the kind of landing it's going to be. So no, I'm not. I'm not because gas prices have gone down a little bit in the last month or so. No, I'm not predicting a soft landing. But well, I guess we've got to ask ourselves, what should we do now?
Yeah.
In light of this? Well, I went long a contract of gasoline this morning. I think that we'll see what happens. That's the way I see it. So I wish they still traded eggs. They don't trade eggs anymore. In fact, here's a factet that I'd like to and once again, I'll use this it's not a factoid. That's an artificial fact, but people stupidly say factoid all the time. Here's a factet. It used to be commodity traders were called butter and egg men.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. In the earlier days of commodity trading, like during the 40s and 50s, if you were a commodity trader, you were known as a butter and egg man because butter and eggs were two of the heavily traded commodities.
Wow.
But they don't trade them anymore. Like at one point, 20 years ago, pork bellies were.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of people didn't even know what pork bellies were.
I didn't, but I'd hear about it every time on the news. You'd hear the news in the background of the business and the morning farm report or whatever.
Yeah, the average guy only found out what pork bellies were, and not even the average guy. If you went to a quiche restaurant,
exactly,
and they serve pork belly, that's what pork bellies are. It's basically the part of the hog that you use for bacon. So anyway, I'm sorry I got off on that tangent.
But all those obscure markets have basically there just wasn't enough volume to trade them anymore, so they just retired them.
That's what happens, I think. Yes. It'd be worth an investigation as to exactly why that happens. Maybe it's because an industry becomes so centralized, so taken over by big companies that they don't need to hedge.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because if you get rid of the actual producer's need to hedge through the futures market, then then it falls away, because that's the basis of all of the commodity markets. Yeah,
I think there's something to that. So it'd be worth investigating. Who could I talk to that would actually know? Oh, well, I do know a guy I could talk to who might have an answer about that.
This also could maybe this could also be related to the cheap money thing, because if these big corporate, if it is centralized, these big companies can go get money much cheaper than having to use hedges in the market. You know what I mean? That might be like that they could, rather than having to sell in the future, if they come up short, they can borrow in the, the bond market or something at a much better rate than they would, and running the risk of running your own trading floor, making sure your eggs don't, sell for too cheap.
Yeah. And of course, I suppose there were a lot of people that were afraid that if they didn't pay up, they'd have to take delivery of, whatever the contract amount, a carload of eggs on their front lawn or something like that.
Yeah.
Everything is looking good just for the moment. Prices are moderating. Official inflation, which is, as you pointed out, a figment of some scribe's imagination in his cubicle, in many cases, is going down. The VIX, volatility index, is back down towards 20. I think it's like a gift. If anybody out there is trading commodities and they're not looking at the VIX, now is an excellent time to go along that. Everything looks pretty. Stock market's up, bond market's up. Everything looks pretty good just at the moment.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like, and I mean, in the socio-political part of the world, it actually feels like it's eased up too. Like it's like we were talking about before the call started. Maybe some of it is because with Elon taking over Twitter, that all these voices that were like warning about the vaccines or whatever, like are now back. And it feels like the other side is scoring some points and, exposing the criminal nature of, what was happening in the background. And, it feels like to the people who are on that side, it feels like the good guys, are starting to get a grasp on things a little bit.
Yeah, but in reality, I'm not as conspiracy oriented as you are, but it's insofar as these people can orchestrate things, these people that live within the Beltway and share the same values and have the same view of the world. It's like a wrestling match, you got to have the one guy beat the other guy over the head with the chair, and then the other guy wins for a while. And
right. Yeah. If you want to involve people's psyche in the struggle, there has to be a give and take, It can't just be one dominating the other, or else the other party's like, I'm not into this. I'm abandoning the psychodrama altogether.
Yeah. And, I was wondering, talking about that, where, correct me if this is a meme that's starting to build, where Trump may be unacceptable for 24 for a number of reasons. So who's the Republican white knight going to be that could, take over for him? And they all seem to be talking about DeSantis from Florida. Yep. But as far as I can tell, and you can't tell anything about these scumbags, but he made a really smart move in downplaying the dangers of the virus and the vaccines.
But he did it a little late, though. He
a little bit late.
He came to it when it was safer.
So yeah, so maybe that was just a really clever political ploy on his part. I suspect he's just another empty suit Republican, and if Trump can't run, then he might try to reassemble the Republican Party, put the Trumpers back together with whoever else is a Republican these days. But I think he's going to be like a Mitt Romney or a who was that other awful person that was the fighter pilot? McCain. He's going to be like a Romney or a McCain in a disguise.
I think
which
so
is to say, they're Democrats, actually part of the deep state. I suspect that's the answer with DeSantis.
I think so too. And I know we get a lot of hate mail about it because people love him, what he's done has been better than others in Florida.
Yeah,
I totally
sure. No
but
question.
But it sure seems to me like he is the person who can bring the Trumpers back into the fold, but with the regular, because he's actually endorsed by a lot of the establishment people. He's endorsed by them. Also, I mean, I find it, again, if you're conspiratorial like I am, or conspiratorial minded at least, you think that, the situation, like the biggest reason the tide has changed is because the formerly richest man in the world bought Twitter and decided to reveal certain things and make a couple of changes in this, not in the real world, but all in this, the information world only. Okay, so he did that.
Did you say formerly richest man? Did he lose some money the other day?
Yeah, he's the guy, the French luxury brand.
Louis Vuitton, that group.
Yeah, the guy who owns that. Yeah, the LVM, whatever group. Yep.
He's richer than Musk, really?
Yeah, right now. I mean, it's all market price.
Well, of course.
But I think that, but he came out and he goes, DeSantis is the guy also. So like people are binding themselves to Elon, and because he's really supporting the people who felt pushed down for a long time, and he's pointing them to DeSantis. So I feel like it's a setup personally, but
I'm so disappointed in Elon. I mean, I hope all these Twitter things and all the information about how corrupt the Democrats and the tech industry are, and the letter agencies are, I hope that isn't all just swept under the rug, but I think it will be. And the reason I think it'll be swept under the rug is because once you have control of the apparatus of the state, you don't do anything that will lose control.
yeah,
I mean, this is why in countries around the world, once the real communists get in power, they can say, we won the election with 98% of the votes, and they get away with it.
Yep.
So I think they'll get away with it. We're going to have a deep stater elected from the Uniparty in 2024.
I totally agree. And I think that I like what Elon's doing, but I also know that I'm supposed to like what Elon's doing. And I also know if he really wanted to really reveal it all, he'd do a WikiLeaks dump of all this internal stuff rather than having these curated, Twitter files updates where they give you strings of information that is damning for the other side, but it's not the real stuff. Like there's clearly lines that are not crossed.
Yeah. Why is it being revealed just to 3 journalists? I mean, should be revealed to everybody. There's so much stuff. I mean, these 3 people, Taibbi and the other 2.
And I like Taibbi a lot. I think he's really good.
Yeah, but do they have time to go through and analyze and pull all the threads and all that and all these things? I don't think so. Wait a minute. Too.
All right, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I like Taibbi too, but it seems to me that Elon should have released it to journalists in general, because does Taibbi really have the time, and the other 2 do they have the time and the resources to go through this huge Gordian knot of information?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a less than a half measure.
Yeah. And well, we also don't even know what level of information they're getting access to, because we know in the first time when they started doing it, they had this guy from the FBI who was their general counsel, who was basically filtering and feeding them the files. Right. So they found that out and they fired him. But I also feel like that's, this guy, obviously we know he's there before that. It's not, you had to know that this guy was kind of a trouble, but, so they got him out of the way. And then it gives you the impression that now there's freer access, but who knows what they're actually getting access to. It's not like they're getting, here's all of our Slack channels, all of our internal communications, and go through it as you will.
Well, the only thing you can believe is the worst possible thing to believe, I think, because everything's going to be filtered out and sanitized, and except for people that they want to hang out to dry, so that we're really like living in the Truman Show. Yeah. Actually, that's the world is turning into a gigantic Truman Show.
Yep. But I do think one thing that is happening is that we are being given scapegoats. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but like we're being handed individuals that are getting the blame. And so the guy who was a head of trust and safety, crazy this person had the job, based upon his background. Like he has his PhD because his dissertation was on gay sex apps.
Oh yeah, right.
Grindr. So this guy was the top of deciding who should be censored. And so like they're putting him like he's definitely a scapegoat. And does he deserve? Yes, of course. But I mean, what about the CEO? What about Jack Dorsey, who, hired this guy? But I think that Fauci will end up being one. And I think that I think Trump will be one because of his Operation Warp Speed. So there will be scapegoats.
God, there's so many stupid things that amaze me. It's like that. It's like that pervert, and I use that word in a technical sense. I mean, it's true. He is a pervert, a degraded one too. The one that dresses up as a furry and then dresses up as a woman, and not only steals one woman's suitcase, but even in the middle of the scandal, goes back and steals another one. We're talking about a person here who's got really, really serious and deep-seated psychological problems. How is it that the Bidenistas would even think in their wildest dreams of appointing somebody like that in such a highly responsible position? And then it turns out that he's the best buddy, the bestie, I guess, of, oh God, who's that awful little faggot who runs Mayor Pete, his husband.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
they're turns out that they're best buddies because I saw a clip. Of course, maybe the clip was manufactured for all I know. But of the two of them, talking like pillow talk to each other, the way, not just men that like other men would talk, like a couple of Spartans. We're talking about a couple of queer faggots talking that way to each other. So who are these? Where do they get these people? Is this what America's like, where, men and women can't be told from each other? And like that strange basketball player, which they idiotically traded for Victor Boot, who I'm a fan of, incidentally. Happy to say that.
Yep. It's Brittany Griner is her name.
Brittany Griner, yeah. So it's unclear to me. I mean, is she a male or a female, actually? I mean, well, and of course, what's a male and what's a female is another question at this point. I mean, this has got to have an impact on kids when they see all this going on. It makes the world very, very hard to understand.
Yeah.
It's got to screw up their psychologies.
Yep. And I saw some stuff on the Brittany Griner situation that was pretty convincing that it was that he is a man. I mean, which is amazing though, that this isn't something that's well known. It's not like a Bruce Jenner thing, It's just well known. It's weird. It's weird. Someone being a WNBA star that's crushing women in their sport is actually a man.
Actually a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this makes me think that there really is a gigantic evil conspiracy to basically corrupt the population. This cannot end well.
Yeah, I heard last, and I think the first time was a couple of weeks ago, but I've heard it from a few places now, that the the Weimar Republic in Germany was not just, I always thought of it just the wheelbarrows of of Deutschmarks, basically, because of hyperinflation. But I didn't understand what I've heard is described as a degraded moral compass, just the sexual permissiveness and all that apparently existed at that same time. Like there was decadence also. And I guess I wasn't aware of that at all. I had no idea.
No, actually, when you look into it, Germany was famous for, general degraded permissiveness and, it was the same thing. So,
and then the Nazi party emerged out of that.
Yeah, the same thing is going to happen here in the US. I don't see any way around it. I mean, I just wonder what's going to happen, to basic salt of the earth Americans, insofar as they still exist, generally in the hinterland and flyover country.
Yep.
How are they going to react? And do they actually, well, I've got to get some boots on the ground and talk to some of these folks, but I'm in my own little bubble too. You know, I've got to go and talk to my car mechanic, and
I think that, yeah, but I do think that this, you know, all of the sexual stuff strikes people as so wrong and bizarre, especially the, you know, the minor attracted person stuff, like the push for that. That's just this degraded degeneracy. I think that hits people in a way that makes them want someone to say, no, the sky is blue. It's actually blue. 2 + 2 is 4, you know? And I think that's where you get this demand for order.
yeah, but as unbelievable as it is, and of course, the Democrats did steal the election in 2020. I personally have no doubt about that. But still, there were, let's say, you know, almost half of American voters voted for these Jacobins in Washington. So maybe things are as bad as they would appear to be, because, hey, it still is kind of a democracy, and they elected these buffoons in Washington, and nobody's really objecting to it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, no, I do think things are as bad as they appear to be. I just think that it's like I think the cycle of all this, the blowback, you know, thinking about the Weimar Republic and then the Nazi Party emerging out of that, you could definitely see, as you've been predicting here, that ultimately you have a general, you know, a powerful general that takes over, you know, in the end, whatever the end is. I think that it's a natural reaction to this degeneracy.
Yeah, that's where I'll put my money, with a general, because the military is still, although it's fading fast, the most respected part of the US government. So I think Americans will go for a general, and maybe it won't be 24, maybe it'll be 28, but I mean, it's completely unpredictable where the world is going to be in 28. I mean, anything could happen. Anything you can imagine could have happened by 2028, or maybe by 2024.
Well, I'm still hoping the clock runs a little longer. I've appreciated every extra year we've had since the financial crisis.
Yeah, we're living on borrowed time. So I hope Wile E. Coyote can keep running out over that canyon for another couple of years. But
Yeah,
in the cartoons, he usually gets about 3 or 4 seconds. So I'm being too optimistic, as usual.
Yeah. All right. Well, there was one other thing I want to talk about just really quick. So that we've gone long on this other stuff, is that during all the COVID stuff, as you know, there's a push for these vaccine passports. We talked repeatedly about the idea that they were building the infrastructure for a control grid, you know, just to be able to automatically grant access to places, you know, whether it be travel, you know, because of a vaccine passport or a QR code to get you into a grocery store, like that kind of thing. It seemed like that they were laying the groundwork for it. The vaccine passports were pushed back for the most part, at least temporarily. But I think that, you know, we see that trend, the underlying energy is still there. And there's an example that popped up with you know, in the news this week about Oxford, and they have their 15-minute city plan. I don't know if you've seen much about that, but
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting where they're apparently dividing Oxford into sections. And if you leave your section more than X number of times per year,
100.
you will be fined for stepping out of bounds. So it's almost like being under house arrest, but not really. It's like being under neighborhood arrest, with some exceptions, because these are reasonable people making the rules.
Of course,
And,
yeah, no.
and they're apparently implementing this all over the world. Now, you know, I like living in the country, frankly. So this doesn't affect me directly in the way I live. But I've lived in cities, and I like that too. And I liked the idea of being able to walk wherever I wanted, and I have to get in the damn car and then park it and all this type of thing. So, this idea of a 15-minute city where everything you want is a 15-minute walk or a 4-minute bike ride, good idea. But the thing is, these people are using it as a means to control.
Exactly.
Whereas with technology and such the way it is, I think the market would respond, and that's the way it would go if they just leave it alone. But instead, they're weaponizing a good idea. That's another word that's come up a lot. Weaponize. Everything is being weaponized, and even a good idea like, yeah, it's nice to live within walking distance of stuff. Good idea.
Yeah,
they're weaponizing that.
They definitely are. And I mean, and they can spin this in a positive way because of the things you mentioned. I mean, if you live in a city, you want to live in a neighborhood in a city where you can get access to almost everything you need. I mean, ideally, city living can be nice if you can walk in where you need to go.
Yeah.
So I think everyone gets that, but it's very suspicious when you look at so this is an initiative that's put forth by an organization called C40.org. And when you see the people that are funders of it, it's and supporters of it, it's a little more suspicious. I'm just going to share my screen real quick to show people. It's worth going and looking at this on your own, but there are some people who are probably not acting on your best behalf here. I mean, the Bloomberg is very concerned about climate change. Most of his charitable activities apparently is oriented toward that. You got the governments are major funders of it. Let's see, obviously all the climate change people.
Yeah.
Then you get down into Open Society Foundation. So that's George Soros again. You got climate funds, all that stuff again. All
these whip dog corporations that go in for ESG and the rest of it.
Yep, and I didn't even understand that there was a global methane hub, to tackle that dangerous gas that's emitted by the cattle. So apparently they're part of it.
Oh. No, meat is on its way out. No question about that.
Exactly. And then there's also the Clinton Foundation is in here. And was there any other one that stood out? I'm trying to remember. Oh, the World Bank.
How is it with all of the scandals revolving around that? It's still there, and no problem. It just drive on.
Yep. But they're not alone. I mean, a lot of these organizations, the World Bank is definitely on my shit list for sure. Like if they're associated with anything, I'm wondering.
Oh, it should be abolished.
Yep. Totally agree. So anyway, those are the people funding this initiative. It's and the idea, there's plans for this all over the world already to implement the same kind of system. And the biggest thing that worries me is the control grid, the stuff that we talked about with the vaccine passports, where ultimately, your access to certain places is going to be computer driven. It's going to be, you'll be identified as who you are, you'll be scored. And depending upon whatever scoring system they have, you will get access or not get access. And this ties into the central bank digital currency. It ties into the credit score. It ties into your CO2 emissions. It ties into all that stuff. And ultimately, you could find yourself essentially living. This is definitely a step to you will own nothing and be happy, in my mind, because that's like, but you live in a nice neighborhood. It's like you're a hamster, but your cage is pretty nice.
It is, yeah.
You got a wheel you can get exercise on. There's always plenty of fresh water.
Yeah.
You got a little burrow you can go into, so that's okay.
And perhaps give you access to a female hamster occasionally, but I guess males aren't that interested in. In fact, if I was a young male today, I'd be cautious about dating a female. First of all, because the females have all been taught to hate males and wonder if they're males themselves. And your testosterone levels apparently are way down. So you really don't want to mate and reproduce anyway. This is all, it's just bizarre. So yeah, you can be a very passive little hamster and pretty happy because you'll be amused.
Right. And also, you think you go one generation ahead, your expectations of your life are fundamentally different anyway. You don't have this globe-trotting notion that you
No,
can
that's
travel
over.
around the world. That's
That's
gone.
over. Forget about that. That's
Yep.
over. Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Well, yeah, this is coming. So I feel like this control grid is going to happen. The question is, when does it get rolled out? And I feel like with what we talked about with like there's kind of some breathing room, with the markets are up, the economy is looking a little bit better than it was, and it's some of the worst times, and the socio-political pressures seem a little lower. If you have a few last things on your bucket list, I'd say for the next 9 months, places you want to see or go, I think that I'd pull it forward and do it, because I feel like there's a little window we're going to get.
yeah, of course, I've never believed in bucket lists.
No, I don't either.
I got to do this before I die. Well, what's the point of living, for Christ's sake? It's.
But I'll give you an example. Like I'd like to take Jane to Italy. She's never been to Europe at all. So I'd like her to see Florence and Siena and Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, just once. I mean, tourism, I hope, is probably will be down, but
yeah. Well, and it is nice to see these things and so forth, and eat in really nice restaurants that aren't part of a national chain disguised to look like it's not part of a national chain. Maybe, yeah. I can see that.
Not a bucket list thing, but it's just like I'd like to do it, so we're going to prioritize doing it in the next.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to do it, so let's do it. Yeah, while we still can. Exactly, because of course, I've always found what I regret most is not the things that I've done, some of which are regrettable, but I really regret the things that I haven't done.
Always, yeah.
More than that. So yeah, do it now.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, where are the? I'm asking myself, where are the rebel forces that's going to overthrow the evil empire? I mean, where are they? Where's the Han Solo lookalike?
Well,
I don't know where he is, and if he exists, they're going to grab him and lock him up.
Well, and also if you're I mean, you'd have to assume they'd be coming from the style of pushing back would be as guerrilla type approaches, and that kind of thing. You got to kind of wait until the piece is settled a little bit, right? You got to know. I mean, it's hard to even know who all is your enemy right now.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. And the thing is I think we're all kind of wired to think in terms of an enemy we can identify. Right. Oh, yeah, there's the Nazis. Okay, that's pretty simple, pretty easy. But this is actually the enemy within.
Yes, and it's almost, and this is probably dangerous to go here, but it's almost the system itself, which is a very it's very Ted Kaczynski like the system itself is set up in a way now that the outcomes are almost guaranteed to continue and be negative, and net negative for human freedom, and the way things are going. And it's the system self-perpetuates that way.
Yeah. Strange days.
Strange days. Yes. So, okay. Well, we'll leave it there, Doug, and we'll be back on Friday with Q&A from members of our file. If you're interested in joining our private member community, go to file.co. There's a link for it in the description of this video.
Yeah, I think people probably should join it because, I mean, it's better to be in a group where people have jumped over at least a teeny weeny hurdle to show that they're willing to jump over that teeny weeny hurdle to kind of join a group of like-minded people.
Yeah. I mean, and the biggest thing about the files, so we get like-minded people there, and we're focused, and the focus there is on solutions. It's not, so it's, you need to have some financial independence. So we focus on stuff like that. Yeah. You need to have some other less dependencies on centralized systems if you don't want to be coerced into having to do things you don't want to do, like whether it be you're dependent upon an employer, for instance, so you have to quit your job or take some participate in a medical experiment you don't want to be part of, or if your bank account can be closed because you supported truckers who are protesting or something. So we focus on solutions to how you can sort of protect yourself or disconnect yourself from those centralized systems so that you can have more resilience and still thrive despite the control grid that's coming our way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
All
not
right.
like, it's not like we need the money. We don't need the money. That's not the point. The point is the little hurdle people have to jump over,
That's right.
I think.
Well, that's right. I mean, the bottom line is that we get, say 12 or 15,000 people will view each video. We have 5,000 people in our Telegram channel. And we have about 550 that have joined File. And the quality of the conversations and the interactions in that are far superior to anything you find in the, in the comments to these videos or in the discussions in the Telegram group. And the reason is because of that hurdle. And so if people basically come in with different expectations, with an idea that they're there to create value and gain value from the engagement in general. And I think it works much better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I look forward to interactions with those guys. Not that I don't look forward to interactions with all the nice people that are listening now.
Of course, yeah. But like with that and the VIP level, we have these live Q&As with them. It's just last time it was me and you and 24 other people, and it was a wonderful conversation. And I think we get to know the members better, and they get to interact with one of their heroes, so they love it.
Yeah, everybody's happy, which is increasingly rare and valuable in this world.
I totally
agree. But wait a minute. Oh, and you'll be happy. Oh, but I'll own nothing. No, that doesn't work.
We'd like you to still own stuff, though.
Yeah, lots of stuff, actually.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it there, Doug. We'll be back on Friday. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.